Today, we're diving into a case where the main piece of evidence wasn't a smoking gun or a bloody knife, but something you might have in your own backyard. A big blue plastic drum. We're going to unpack how this completely ordinary object became an icon of absolute terror, tied forever to a chilling story of betrayal and a meticulously planned murder. And that question right there, that's really at the heart of this whole story. We're about to deconstruct a crime that didn't just take a life, it seeped into the public consciousness, attaching this really sinister legacy to a totally everyday thing. So let's get into it. We're talking about the infamous Muskan blue drum case. You know, the name itself tells you everything you need to know about its most horrific defining feature. This case is basically a masterclass in premeditation, betrayal, and the truly bizarre ripple effects that a single crime can have on an entire society. Okay, so a horrific discovery. The investigation begins. Every investigation has to start somewhere, but for this one, it wasn't some frantic 911 call or a missing person report. Nope, it was something much more mundane that led police to a scene of unimaginable horror. So get this, it had been about 15 days since the crime was actually committed, and neighbors just couldn't ignore this persistent, awful smell that was coming from a rented house nearby. Their call to the police would blow the lid right off a carefully, meticulously planned murder. So inside the house, police found the source of the smell, a 220-liter blue plastic drum. Now, from a criminologist's point of view, the way they tried to hide the body, it's incredibly revealing. The victim had been dismembered into about 15 pieces, then sealed under a thick layer of cement. Look, this isn't just hiding a body. This is a brutal act of depersonalization. It's a calculated forensic countermeasure that's designed to destroy evidence and, of course, delay anyone from figuring out who the victim was. A triangle of betrayal, the people involved. So to really understand how we got to a body in a drum, we have to rewind and look at the people at the center of this. This was not a random act of violence, not at all. It was a deeply personal crime born from a twisted triangle of love, deceit, and ultimately betrayal. On one side, we have our victim, Saurabh Rajput, a merchant Navy officer. And on the other side, his wife, Muskan Rastogi, and her lover, Sahil Shukla. So you see, the core conflict here is a classic, but in this case, a truly deadly one, an extramarital affair that spiraled into a cold-blooded murder plot. And the timing here? Wow, the timing is just critical. Saurabh came home on February 24th for what should have been a happy family celebration, his own daughter's birthday. But instead, his arrival acted as the trigger. Investigators are clear on this. This wasn't a crime of passion that just happened. No. His return home is what activated a plan that was already in place, just waiting. Anatomy of a murder. A premeditated plan. Now let's really get into the anatomy of the murder itself. A clinical breakdown of what happened reveals a level of premeditation that is just chilling. This wasn't some spontaneous act of rage. From a procedural standpoint, it was a methodical, step-by-step execution. The crime scene reconstruction laid out a very clear sequential process. First up, sedation. They incapacitated the victim with sleeping pills, which removed any chance of him fighting back. Second, the killing itself. Third, the dismemberment. And finally, the concealment inside that now infamous drum. You see, this sequence isn't chaotic. It shows forethought, a disturbing kind of problem solving, and a real commitment to seeing each horrible stage of their plan through to the end. So the big question is, why? What could possibly drive them to do this? Well, the psychological profile here suggests a pretty toxic cocktail of motives. The primary driver, as you can see, was relational. Get Saurabh out of the picture to clear the way for the affair. But then, that was compounded by a huge financial incentive. Saurabh had just gotten back with a lot of money. And the final layer, this alleged manipulation where Muskan might have used fake profiles to influence her lover, that suggests a deeply calculating mind and a really complex, twisted power dynamic at play. The cover-up unravels, deception and confession. You know, committing the murder was really only half the plan. The other half was getting away with it. So this section is all about their calculated attempts to mislead the police and the one crucial, very human error that brought the whole thing crashing down. This timeline of deception is so telling. Look at it. The murder happens, and the very next day they travel to another state. That is a classic attempt to establish an alibi. And that action right there is powerful evidence of premeditation. They weren't reacting to a crime they just committed. They were moving on to the next phase of their plan, the cover-up. But for all their careful planning, their undoing didn't come from a clever detective or a forensic slip-up. It came from human psychology. Muskan confessed everything to her own mother. And that is the critical turning point, the moment where the sheer weight of what she had done just became too much to bear. Her mother was then faced with an absolutely impossible choice, and she ultimately chose to report her own daughter to the police. A case's shocking legacy, the ripple effect. A crime of this magnitude is never just about the victim and the killers. It sends these ripples out into society, and it can change perceptions, conversations, and even business in the most unexpected ways. And the most immediate ripple, of course, is the profound grief and rage of the victim's family. In this really raw, emotional courtroom confrontation, Saurabh's mother made her feelings crystal clear, demanding the ultimate punishment for the people who took her son. It just adds such a powerful human dimension to all the legal proceedings. And this is where the cultural afterlife of this crime gets really strange. The blue drum wasn't just a piece of evidence anymore. It became a kind of macabre meme on social media. And believe it or not, this had tangible, real-world consequences. Retailers started demanding ID for anyone buying a large drum, and sales actually dipped for a while. It's a fascinating, if disturbing, example of how a high-profile case can literally stigmatize an ordinary object. But the legacy of this case extends into an even darker, more disturbing territory. It essentially provided a blueprint for future crimes. Criminologists started to identify an emerging pattern of copycat offenses, and they even coined a new term for it, blue drum murders, to describe cases that mimicked this specific method. The case didn't just capture public attention, it actively influenced criminal behavior. And all of this brings us to a final, pretty unsettling question about where crime and culture intersect. The Muskan case is a powerful study in how media saturation can turn a truly brutal act into a cultural reference point. It shows that the story around a crime can become just as impactful as the crime itself, shaping how we all think, and in the worst cases, even inspiring imitation. It's a sobering reminder of the power these stories really hold.